In the heart of the Negev Desert, a land so unforgiving that summer temperatures soar to 120 degrees Fahrenheit and rain falls only a few weeks each year, the people of Israel faced a stark choice: abandon their homeland or challenge nature itself. Just 50 miles away, the Mediterranean Sea stretched endlessly, holding billions of gallons of water that were useless for drinking or farming. The desert was expanding, the population was growing, and survival demanded something radical. So Israel made an audacious decision. They wouldn't just bring water to the desert, they would create a river through it. Over time, the nation carved more than 12,000 kilometers of artificial waterways through barren land and perfected desalination technology so advanced it stunned the world, turning seawater into freshwater at scale. In doing so, they transformed sand into a breadbasket that now feeds millions. This wasn't just engineering, this was alchemy on a national scale. The first challenge bordered on geological insanity. Israel wasn't just digging a canal, it was attempting to carve a 150-foot wide, 23-foot deep riverbed through 250 miles of shifting, water-hungry desert sand. This wasn't solid earth, it was a living surface, constantly reshaped by wind, gravity, and heat. Any mistake would collapse back into nothing. To even begin, engineers turned to technology normally reserved for military operations. Satellite-guided bulldozers and ground-penetrating radar mapped the desert's hidden structure, revealing layers of sand, gravel, and ancient riverbeds long buried by time. Every meter had to be planned before a single blade touched the ground. But the desert fought back. Sand doesn't stay put, it moves. A single overnight sandstorm could erase weeks of progress, swallowing machinery and refilling trenches by morning. Traditional excavation methods simply didn't work. The land refused to cooperate. The breakthrough came with an unexpected solution: water. Engineers injected groundwater directly into the dunes, saturating the sand and transforming loose grains into a dense, compactable mass. What had once flowed like liquid could now be shaped, packed, and held in place. The desert was being temporarily tamed. With the ground stabilized, hundreds of bulldozers moved in synchronized waves, flattening massive dunes and constructing embankments 10 to 16 feet high using the very sand they removed. Nothing was wasted. The canal rose from the desert itself, sculpted rather than imported. The precision was unforgiving. The entire canal had to maintain a slope of exactly 1 inch per 100 feet, an error margin so tight that laser-guided survey teams checked elevation every 160 feet. For months, 1,200 workers labored in relentless 115-degree Fahrenheit heat, moving 70,000 tons of sand every single day. By the end, they hadn't just dug a trench, they had built the longest artificial riverbed on Earth. A trench carved through sand meant nothing in a desert like the Negev. The moment water touched bare ground, it vanished, instantly absorbed by thirsty soil that had waited centuries for moisture. If this river was going to survive, it needed more than depth and slope. It needed a body. Israel's engineers realized they weren't building a canal, they were constructing a sealed artery capable of carrying life across one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. The solution was radical in scale. Across more than 220 miles of desert, crews would install a continuous waterproof lining, beginning with massive HDPE geomembranes. These thick polymer sheets were rolled out along the canal bed and walls, stretched tight and anchored with steel pins driven deep into the ground. This hidden layer formed the river's skin, preventing even microscopic leaks before a single drop of water ever flowed.
On top of this barrier came the concrete, poured not in long strips, but in carefully controlled sections. Panels 4 to 5 inches thick were cast in 16 by 10-foot segments, each one placed with surgical precision. Every joint was sealed with hot bitumen, a flexible binding that allowed the structure to expand and contract under extreme temperature swings that could exceed 40 degrees in a single day. A rigid canal would crack. Flexibility was survival. The work unfolded under brutal conditions. Crews raced against curing times as the desert sun baked the concrete, while surveyors constantly checked alignment and elevation. This wasn't traditional construction. It was the assembly of a 250-mile-long, watertight puzzle where a single flawed joint could drain water from miles of completed canal. Every section depended on the last. To defend the structure from wind and erosion, engineers turned to living reinforcement. Vetiver grass and desert acacia were planted along the banks, their deep interlocking root systems anchoring the slopes and shielding the concrete from shifting sand. When the final panel set, a silver ribbon of concrete cut cleanly through the golden desert, empty, silent, and waiting for the water that would soon reshape an entire nation. Now came the true miracle. Seawater from the Mediterranean finally reached the head of the canal, surging forward with promise, but it was still poison. Salt water was more lethal to crops than drought itself, burning roots, killing soil, and making land permanently barren. Before a single field could be irrigated or a single glass filled, the water had to be transformed at the molecular level. What stood between survival and collapse was not digging or concrete, but chemistry. Israel's answer was a cascading sequence of filtration technologies so advanced it bordered on science fiction. The process began with brute force, mechanical filters stripping out sand, shells, and debris carried in from the sea. From there, the water passed through hollow fiber membranes, dense forests of microscopic tubes that trapped algae, bacteria, and organic matter invisible to the human eye. Each stage reduced chaos, preparing the water for its most extreme trial. That trial took place inside reverse osmosis chambers, where physics itself became a weapon. Seawater was forced through semi-permeable membranes under crushing pressure, so intense that only pure H2O molecules could pass through, while salt ions and contaminants were left behind. Pumps roared, membranes strained, and energy consumption soared. What emerged on the other side was not seawater, not brackish water, but near-perfect chemical purity. Yet perfection came with a problem. This water was too pure, stripped of the minerals essential to human health and agricultural balance. Engineers responded with precision remineralization, adding exact doses of calcium and magnesium measured to the milligram. The result wasn't merely safe drinking water, it was water engineered to be healthier and more stable than most natural freshwater sources on Earth. The final safeguard was sterilization at the speed of light. Ultraviolet radiation and ozone treatment annihilated any remaining pathogens, leaving nothing alive but the water itself. Thousands of digital sensors monitored pressure, salinity, temperature, and flow in real time, adjusting the system second by second. Israel wasn't just desalinating seawater, they were performing chemistry at continental scale, turning the Mediterranean into a freshwater reservoir capable of sustaining an entire nation. Bringing water to the desert solved half the problem. In a place where the sun devours moisture and the wind steals it from the soil, abundance could still vanish in hours. Traditional irrigation methods, flooding fields or spraying water into the air, were catastrophically wasteful, with most of the precious supply lost to evaporation before it ever reached a plant's roots. If the desert was going to bloom, Israel didn't just need water, it needed control, precision, and discipline down to the last drop.
The breakthrough began with a quiet observation in the 1950s. Israeli engineer Simcha Blas noticed a single tree growing larger and healthier than all the others around it. There was no extra rain, no richer soil, only a small, steady leak from a nearby pipe, dripping water slowly into the ground. That leak revealed a counterintuitive truth. Plants didn't need more water. They needed water delivered exactly where and when it mattered. From this insight, Blas developed drip irrigation, a system of narrow tubes and tiny emitters that released water directly to a plant's root zone, drop by deliberate drop. When this invention was paired with the newly built desert river, agriculture in arid land was fundamentally rewritten. Water that once vanished into heat and wind was now guided with surgical precision beneath the soil surface. Farmers who had previously lost nearly 70% of their water to evaporation suddenly achieved efficiency rates approaching 95%. Every plant received a measured supply tailored to its growth stage. No runoff, no oversaturation, no waste. In a land defined by scarcity, efficiency became the ultimate form of abundance. The results were nothing short of surreal. Orchards rose from sand, rows of oranges, dates, grapes, and vegetables thriving in terrain where nothing had grown for thousands of years. From the ground, it looked impossible. From space, it looked undeniable.
Satellite images revealed a green ribbon winding through the yellow desert, a living signature etched into the landscape. It was visible proof that water, when mastered with intelligence and restraint, could conquer sand and rewrite the fate of a nation. The impact was immediate, and it was impossible to ignore. When the national water carrier was completed in 1964, after 11 years of construction at a cost of $420 million, a figure that would equal billions today, it fundamentally rewired the country's geography. Water could now be moved at a staggering rate of 72,000 cubic meters per hour, flowing from the Sea of Galilee in the north to the sun-scorched Negev in the south. What had once been a fragmented land of isolated water sources became a single, interconnected system, capable of sustaining life far beyond natural limits. For the first time in history, the desert was no longer a boundary, it was a destination. Almost overnight, the Negev began to change. Areas long written off as uninhabitable saw people return, first with tents, then with tractors, then with permanent homes. Fields that hadn't felt a plow in centuries were carved back into the land, fed by controlled irrigation systems that delivered water with unprecedented efficiency. New villages rose from the sand, complete with schools, hospitals, and agricultural research centers pushing the limits of what could grow in arid soil. Greenhouses bloomed where nothing had survived before, and the desert itself became a living laboratory for high-tech farming. What had once required constant emergency water rationing was replaced by precision management and long-term planning. The transformation didn't stop at survival, it scaled into dominance. Today, Israel exports more than $2 billion worth of agricultural produce every year from land that was literally barren just 6 decades ago. Even more astonishing, the country now produces roughly 20% more water than it consumes, combining desalination, recycling, and national distribution into a system unmatched anywhere in the world. A nation born in drought became a water exporting power. What began as a desperate gamble to avoid collapse evolved into a blueprint studied by arid regions across the globe, from California to Australia to Saudi Arabia. The impossible river didn't just change Israel, it changed how the world thinks about water itself. The Negev Desert today is almost unrecognizable from the wasteland it once was. Where endless dunes once stretched beneath a merciless sun, more than 400,000 acres of farmland now produce food year after year. Fields of crops break the horizon, fed by precisely managed irrigation systems that defy the region's brutal climate. Solar-powered desalination plants hum continuously, converting seawater into freshwater while drawing energy from the same sun that once made survival nearly impossible. And beneath it all, unseen but constant, the artificial river continues its silent journey, a concrete vein pumping life through what was once considered one of Earth's dead zones.
What Israel proved here was something far larger than agriculture or infrastructure. It demonstrated that scarcity is not destiny. In a place defined for centuries by limits of rain, of rivers, of soil, those limits were challenged and rewritten through ingenuity, planning, and relentless experimentation. The desert was not conquered or erased. It was understood, negotiated with, and reshaped. Technology didn't replace nature, it partnered with it, amplifying what nature could not provide on its own while respecting the constraints that still remained. In the end, this is more than a story about canals, concrete, or desalination plants. It is a story about refusal. The refusal to accept inherited boundaries, the refusal to see salt water as useless, the refusal to believe that geography alone determines fate. By looking at an ocean of salt water and seeing an ocean of possibility, Israel transformed the most basic human necessity, water, into a national superpower. They didn't just build a river, they built a new relationship between humanity and the planet, one that suggests the future of survival may not lie in escaping harsh environments, but in learning how to make them bloom. If this story of transforming salt into life and sand into sustenance changed how you see human ingenuity, subscribe to the Leviathan Project. What other impossible transformations should we explore? Turning air into water? Growing forests in salt flats? Let us know in the comments. This is the Leviathan Project. We'll see you at the next frontier of the impossible.